My name is Riley Donahoe. I'm doing my presentation on Taiwan's importance to global security. I think this is an important topic given all the news surrounding Taiwan and what would happen if China were to forcibly take over the island and reunify. I think it has serious implications for security, not just in the region, but globally. A little historical background on Taiwan. So, after 1945, when the Empire of Japan was defeated in World War II, the Republic of China, as it was known then, in the Chinese Communist Party, they resumed hostilities that had been prevalent since the 1920s. They kind of ceased to fight a common enemy during World War II, and then after the war ended, hostilities resumed. The Communist forces were led by Mao Zedong, and the Republic of China forces were led by Chiang Kai-shek. And so in 1949, the Communist forces defeated uh, the government forces and they retreated to the island of Taiwan. And so Mao Zedong took over as the communist dictator of mainland China, and then Chiang Kai shek set up a de facto government for the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan. And that was actually recognized as the legitimate government of China by the United States and many other nations around the world until 1979. In 1979, the relations with communist China were somewhat normalized with the United States, and then uh, mainland China, controlled by the CCP, was recognized as the legitimate government. So after the recognition in 1979 um, of the PRC being the legitimate government of China, China has maintained a one China policy, which does not recognize Taiwan as being a sovereign nation, and it doesn't recognize their government as being legitimate. So China is pretty steadfast in that, Taiwan is just a province of China and that they have no sovereignty. And they also say it's an indispensable part of China, so it's a non-negotiable point if for them to cede Taiwan and give them sovereignty. And so the U.S. in 1979 came out with the Taiwan Relations Act, which kind of defines the somewhat ambiguous stance that's held for Taiwan, and it basically allows for specifically United States to provide Taiwan with some economic support, and also we're able to give them weapons so they are able to defend themselves. This has not been taken kindly by China. They don't like this, and so the U.S. has basically just maintained this status quo ambiguous stance that is kind of up until this point it's kind of held and kept some general peace in the region. But as we've seen in recent years, things are getting a little more tumultuous in the region, and we don't know how much longer um, this ambiguous stance from the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act will hold up. So the current security situation in the region. So since President Xi Jinping, who's the current president of China, came to power in 2012, he has taken a much more aggressive stance in his desire to unify Taiwan with mainland China. Xi has not taken a military option off the table as a means to reunify the country. And I mean, it's important to state that right now Taiwan is a thriving democracy with a free market economy. So it's completely different than what's going on in China, where the Communist Party controls everything. Um, I mean, China does have some elements of a free market economy, but it's strictly monitored and controlled by the Communist Party. Uh, the PRC has rapidly built up the military in the region, so they've militarized many islands in the South China Sea. If you look at the map, the picture on the left there, it shows what is called China's nine dash line, which is what China claims as their sovereign territory, which is essentially all of the South China Sea, to include many of the islands in the South China Sea, which are disputed between other countries in the region as being their sovereign territory. So they're seizing a lot of these islands. They're building up islands and putting ports on these islands or airstrips to land aircraft on. And China has consistently threatened many international vessels traveling through the area with their military because they believe it's their sovereign territory, but it's recognized by the rest of the world as international waters, so it's free for global trade to transit that area. So Taiwan is immensely important to global trade. Taiwan has deep commercial and financial and trade relationships with many countries around the globe. The Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea are vital to commercial shipping. So, just the Taiwan Strait alone, about one fifth of global trade passes through the Taiwan Strait, and for the South China Sea, I believe it's about one third of global trade. So, a good bit of global trade transits just in that region that China claims as their sovereign territory. And the biggest importance of Taiwan to global trade is that they are the leading producer of advanced chips and semiconductors for the global market. So roughly, they produce around like 90% of semiconductors and advanced chips. So these are the things that go in vehicles, cell phones, any electronics you can think of. The majority of these components come from Taiwan. So a PRC annexation of Taiwan would have drastic effects on the global economy due to most of the globe relying on Taiwan to receive these important components. So, what would be the potential outcome in a world without Taiwan if the PRC were to forcibly take control of the country? Because many countries rely on Taiwan for their supplies of advanced chips and semiconductors, China could use this to their advantage to unfairly manipulate countries, basically bending them to their will in order for them to get the supply of these components, since most countries, to include the United States, don't have the capability to manufacture these things domestically. I know, like, the United States is taking steps to kind of safeguard this possibility, but we're nowhere near, in the near future, to being able to produce the amount we would need. So if China were to withhold these important components from countries around the globe that didn't want to play ball with China, this could spark widespread inflation in many parts of the globe. So a takeover of the island could see China um, close down these international trade routes surrounding Taiwan, so like the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. So they could prohibit trade vessels from traversing these waters, which would strain trade relationships with many global trading partners, and it could make it harder for countries to export their products to where they needed to go. So this could also result in inflation. And I mean, Taiwan it's located in what the U.S. calls the first island chain. So this is a strategic area in the Pacific. And so if China were to seize control of Taiwan, it would cut off many allies in the region, like Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, Australia. It basically could drive a wedge in between these countries and make it harder to come to each other's aid or defense if they took control of the island. So, and I mean, worst case scenario, if China invaded the island of Taiwan because they are so important to global trade and the waters around them are so important to global trade, you could see a forcible takeover result in a global conflict where you have countries like the U.S., Australia, countries in Western Europe getting involved to um, stop China from taking over Taiwan. So that's a worst case scenario, but at the very least, it will cause massive global inflation.